Give it to me like.
Hey guys, welcome to this video. Today I bring to you a build that I've been working on for a minute. It's called Hildryn's Wrath, and I'm going to get into the breakdown on how to run Hildryn, what all her original abilities are, and how the way I got her modded, including her weapons, which I'm going to show the weapons at the end of the video, and I'll get into a further breakdown of the weapons towards the end of the video. If you like this kind of content, please comment down below, subscribe, share with your friends. Without further ado, let's get into this. So, Hildryn is a very supportive frame when it comes down to it, as she's more built for shielding than anything else. But just because she shields doesn't mean she can't do anything else, and that's when Hildryn's Wrath comes into play. So, let's get into it. So, we run Hildryn differently than a lot of people run Hildryn, and Hildryn has 4 different abilities that she uses. So it's Balefire she uses Pillage, Haven, and Energy Storm. And I'm going to basically break down exactly how the way these abilities work, how you can use them, and everything like that. So her Balefire basically pulls out a gun, like a little mini gun, and the little tiny gun shoots a bolt of fire at the enemies, and it's not that great. It's meh. It's okay. But it also uses her shields for ammo. And then you have Pillage. Pillage is exactly what the name sounds like. It basically takes the shields away for shields and armor from enemies. It strips armor and steals shields from enemies and gives it straight to you. So that way you can keep your shields up. And then now you have Haven. Haven basically keeps your shields up and your ally shields within your radius. And enemies within a certain radius take damage from Haven. And then you have Energy Storm. Energy Storm basically lifts enemies up, and the longer you hold the enemy up, a couple seconds after you lift them, they basically generate orbs. This works out very well if you're being supportive, and one good thing about Hildryn is literally made for being supportive. So her mods, the way she's set up, is mainly for supportive. But you can also dish out the damage right along with her. So we're going to get into the build. I'm going to show you exactly what I'm using, how the way I'm running it, and all the mods right along with it. So, let's get into this. So, for her aura mod, we're using corrosive ejection, which reduces the enemy's shields or armor by 18%. Not shields, armor. So you're reducing the armor of the enemies that you face by 18%. And that mostly is the Grineer or any of the corrupted enemies, like the corrupted Grineer. It reduces their armor by 18%. That's already before you start armor stripping them. Alright, so we're also using Sure-Footed, and I'm going to be moving to these mods, showing exactly how the way these mods work and everything like that. And then I'm also going to talk about the abilities we're using as well. So we're using Sentient Wrath. That is something that we're added to this build to allow us to do more damage to enemies. And if you see how the way it's spec'd here, basically, we lift up 34 enemies. Alright, we have a range of 38. And then the damage we put out is 2,140. And we make them vulnerable by 74%. We use Pillage. And the main thing, the reason why I'm bringing up Pillage and Haven are the 2 go-to for this build. Allow you to still be supportive, but at the same time allows you to help your allies break down the enemies really quickly. And then Energy Storm is something allows you to support your allies that are not running Hildryn to give them energy orbs, so that way they can continue using their WaRframe abilities, or the animals use their companion use their abilities and things like that. So it allows you to keep building upon energy, so that way you can help your allies if you're trying to do like a 2-hour run of survival. If you're into that, this build works for that. Alright. Now for our Eximus slot, we're using Sure-Footed. Sure-Footed is okay. Like, you could use Prime Sure-Footed. I'm just using the base Sure-Footed. And the likelihood of me running into my explosions, I don't run into it often. Alright, so as you see, I'm showing the mods here. I'm showing Corrosive Projection. And then we're going to have Sure-Footed. And then when it comes down to all the other mods, we're using Redirection, Adaptation, Blazing Pillage, Augur Reach, Augur Secrets, Blind Rage, Prime Vigor, and Stretch. These mods work out so well when it comes down to Hildryn because it allows you to reach out further distances to be able to get enemies, to knock the enemies down, and not only just knock down the enemies, it allows you to play support, especially with the Blazing Pillage. The Blazing Pillage, as long as you have Haven active, the moment you go to pillage enemies, it is important to do this because you want to put Haven on first. So Haven is your first move to go anytime that you use Hildryn. You go straight into Haven, then you go into your pillage, Sentient's Wrath, and then as you go further into the mission and things like that, and then you can use your AG Storm. Alright? And Blazing Pillage is so good because it adds an additional 50 to the 50 you already pillaged from the enemies. And this is 50 per enemy that you're hitting. So basically you're pulling 50 from each enemy as you're pulling their shields or armor. Now you're pulling 107. And so you're pulling 107, whether it's armor or shields, you're pulling it from the enemies and giving yourself back your full capacity of your shields. And the cool thing about Hildryn when it comes down to her passive is that when her shields break and she has no shields, she's immune for about 3.5 seconds. This allows you to either jump out into your operator and use, I think it's Normand. I think it's Normand, or no, it's Vosarin. So you can use Vosarin, and you can use your Void Charge to re-jump your shields back, and then go right back into your WaRframe and continue killing. And this allows you to basically optimize Hildryn's abilities if that ever would happen, and you have enemies that will break your shields really quickly. The other thing is, as you probably saw already, I'm using Redirection, Prime Vigor, and these two mods increases your shield capacity. You want to have as much shields as possible with Hildryn. That way, you can use your abilities almost similar to like spamming in a way, where you can actually do more with Hildryn, which allows you to be able to put out either more damage or armor strip, or making enemies more vulnerable to damage, so for either you or your allies. This helps out both. So enemies that basically getting hit by your Sentient's Wrath is basically taking amplified damage. Meaning amplified damage is not just from you. It's amplified damage from you and your squad. So they're taking a certain amount more damage for about 10 seconds based off how the way we have this built, which is really good. 10 seconds is a long amount of time. If you think about it, it is a good amount of time for you to do damage on the enemy. Blind Rage, and Augur Secrets is no secret to it, no pun intended. But these two basically increases your pillage damage, how much you drain from enemies, and this works so well. It increases the amount of damage you do per second with Haven on enemies, which is radioactive too, which is amazing because any enemy is affected by radioactive damage, they start fighting themselves also while fighting you. So they start fighting among themselves, so you have them shooting each other, and then you're just pillaging. You're just pillaging as much shields as possible. So this actually helps. And then AG Storm, basically, as I explained before, AG Storm is what allows you to get your allies' energy. Now, when it comes down to arcanes, I use two of them. I use Arcane Nullifier and Arcane Guardian. You can use Grace. You can use whatever you want when it comes down to your arcanes, along it works with the build. I use Nullifier and I also use Guardian because I run either a lot of Corpus missions or a lot of Grineer missions. And the Corpus, half of the time, some of the times they end up hitting me with either some magnetic damage, and sometimes that affects me using my WaRframe abilities. With this gives me 100%, 102 chance to resist a magnetic static effect. So it allows me to continue running and gunning. So it doesn't stop me from using my abilities whatsoever, because magnetic can stop you from using your abilities. Arcane Guardian, it basically allows us on damage to gain 900 armor for 20 seconds. And it's a 15% chance. Yes, it says 15, but you get it a lot more as you fight a lot of enemies. and it's basically on damage. So it can be 15% per enemy, or it can be 15% the one time you take damage. And from what I've seen, I believe it's 15% chance per enemy as trying to damage you. So when you take this damage, this basically gives you a little bit more survivability, allow you to live a little bit longer. So I'm also showing the Balefire. The Balefire we do not use whatsoever. To me, out of all the exalted weapons, it's not that great. It's just a meh weapon. You could use it if you want to, but if you use it, you got to think about it. You need Haven, you need Pillage, and Edgy Storms is very supportive. So you want to be as supportive and tanky as possible. And if you notice, before we go into this, and I'm going to run the mission, but if you notice this, if you look at my efficiency is sitting at 50%. It doesn't matter what your efficiency is when it comes down to Hildryn. Because as long as you have those shields, you can basically continue using your abilities. Your efficiency truly does not matter. At least, especially for this build with Hildryn, it does not matter at all. Alright, so now we're going to run the footage, and I'm just going to give you a play-by-play exactly what I'm doing, how I'm getting everything to work, how I'm getting everything set up to make it run smoothly. So, when we load into the mission here, so the first thing we're going to do is activate our Haven, and then now we're going to start pillaging enemies. So, if you notice so far, some of the enemies didn't get armor stripped. If you do a second pillage, it's going to armor strip the enemies. And I do that a little bit further on into this video. I basically hit the enemies, I send them up in the air, and then I basically pillage them, and you see them catch on fire as I pillage them, which allows us to do more damage and allows it to work way better when we start armor stripping. Especially when we're using the our primary, the Bub Conoco. That gun is really good, especially for AoE when you're firing in the second form. We're not using it in this primary form, we're using it in this second form. And as you notice, we're constantly pillaging and we're constantly using Sentient's Wrath. And you see the enemies are up in the air, they're not really moving, they're stuck exactly where we have them. This allows us to control the ads. It may not be a lot, but 34 is a good amount of enemies to control to keep the fire off of your allies, especially if they're running like a little bit squishier frames such as Mag, Limbo, but Limbo is really rarely used based off of what you're doing. Mag, Protea, what else the other one? Nova. It basically allows those squishier frames to survive. And the whole goal of this build is supportive, damage, and also debuffing the enemies to a point that we can actually do more damage to them because we're making them taking more damage from our Sentient's Wrath. And this is without an augment. Sentient's Wrath has not got an augment yet. Caliban has not got an augment. I was searching for it. I thought he did, but I looked and I have not seen an augment for it. So this is really, really good for the amount of extra damage we're giving ourselves, and our allies just from using Sentient's Wrath. So we're just launching enemies up in the air. They're basically stuck in the air. They're not shooting. So that's 34 enemies that are not shooting at you. That's amazing because you're basically helping your allies stay alive. You're regenerating their shields. You're also regenerating your shields. And then you're also doing extra status damage on them, such as fire. And then not only that though, when it comes down to the Grineer, you're also armor stripping them, which is really, really good because it allows your allies to kill enemies really, really quickly. Yeah, so if you like this kind of stuff, please tell me what you think of this kind of build. This is more of an in-depth build that I'm doing. And when it comes down to the weapons, I am going to get into the weapons towards the end of the video. And you'll see it as I go through the weapons. I'm not going to give a full detailed run of the weapons, but I'm going to give just a basic brief of the arcanes that I'm using. And yes, the ribbon that they are having. And I'm going to break it down into a following video of exactly what ribbons that I'm running, why am I running it that certain way. And one of the weapons that I have in this video, I do not really use on this build, or at least on Hildryn. I just have it equipped for right now, which, if you haven't noticed, is the Dolthai. I usually use that on a different frame. But, you know, I mess around with other weapons trying to keep them on my gun, on my character and whatnot. And look what we do to the Acolyte. So we basically do our pillage on him, and we just ripped his armor, right? And then we raft him. Look how much damage he's taking. We basically debuffed him. It didn't launch him in the air because he's an acolyte, of course. He's like a mini boss, so it won't launch the mini bosses in the air. What it's going to do, the debuff will apply to the enemy if it's a mini boss. So now you're adding more damage and vulnerability to the boss. So it allows you to kill the boss really quickly, which is really good. This is really, really good for overall survivability, helping your allies, and being a supportive tank. Alright guys, if you like this kind of content, please comment down below, tell me what you think. At the end of the video, I'm just going to show a brief of the mods and stuff that's on the guns. And I'm going to do a full breakdown on the guns in another video. And the melee weapon. Alright guys, catch you later. Peace.
I've delivered another life support capsule. The raid is off to a successful start. When you are ready, go to extraction.
Your will was greater. This is good.
Alright guys, I'm going to show you the basics of the mods that's on the gun. I'm not going to get into a detailed, as I was saying before, I'm not going to get into a super thorough detail of the weapon. I'm just going to show you the basics of the mods that's on it. and then I'll break it down in a further video. And then we're also using primary merciless. And then secondary deadhead. And then I'll melee, which would be a Jat Kuzar, or Kuzar, which is by far my favorite melee. I don't think I ever take that melee off, which is a chain blade or is a whip blade. And that's basically it. If you like this kind of content, guys, please comment down below. Tell me what you think. And I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Give it to me like